Question 20, where Don says, what is the objective? What is the, shall we say, the leader, the one at the very top of the pecking order in 5th density Orion, have as an objective? I would like to understand his philosophy with respect to his objectives and plans for what we might call the future or his future. Ra says, this thinking will not be so strange to you. Therefore, we may speak through the densities as your planet has some negatively oriented action in sway at this space-time nexus. The early 5th density negative entity, if oriented towards maintaining cohesion as a social memory complex, may, in its free will, determine that the path to wisdom lies in the manipulation and in exquisite propriety of all other selves. It then, by virtue of its abilities in wisdom, is able to be the leader of 4 density beings, which are upon the road to wisdom, by exploring the dimensions of love of self and understanding of self. These 5th density entities see the creation as that which shall be put in order. Order. There must be order. Law and order. How does that sound? That rings so true to our planet. And Ra does say so. I love how they use, our own language to describe. It's not even, it's just, it's the pure reflection of negativity in our planet that is so easy to use. It seems like it's easier to talk about negativity than about positivity, because positivity is shrouded in mysticism and shrouded in so many distortions. But negativity, it stands out. And this is why it is being revealed so much now with the changing of the era of the New Age. The New Age, not spiritually, but the new era, the new Yuga that we're entering. The great year. The new era, as the Mayans call it. So, Ra says, this thinking will not be so strange to you because, yes, at this time in the planet, we have a very negative-oriented philosophy and structure, I would say. Though, we don't have a negative population. We just have a very indifferent population, which is probably more stressing than a negative one. At least a negative one would say, alright, this is it, roll negative, roll a big corporation here, you fight for the biggest share. It's all about me. It's all about the self. So, and the individual self, I mean. So, no, we don't. We just have a bunch of indifferent people. Billions of indifferent people that have no interest. And I mean, I'm speaking because from experience, I've known this. I used to be very indifferent into all of this. But awakening is happening, and so it's inevitable. Anyhow, Ra says the early 5th density negative entity, if oriented towards maintaining cohesion as a social memory complex, may in its free will determine that the path of wisdom lies in the manipulation in exquisite propriety of all other selves. This is the 5th density negative. Don is asking specifically, what is it that the one at the top, the CEO of the Orion group, wants to achieve? Well, we know they want polarization. They're doing work in consciousness. So they want to polarize more by working consciousness, and that working consciousness is manipulating even those of 4 density negative. That's what they're trying to do. They cannot manipulate 4 density positive because those of 4 density positive are without veil, have polarized positively, and they are already just learning the lessons of love and understanding. So they cannot manipulate them. It's not possible. At least from my understanding. It is possible, however, that 4 density negatives are 20%, says Ra, 20% of them, on average, I suppose, are reveal the path of truth. And so they switch polarities into positive, and they're welcomed by the positive entities, by us. What else would we do? As positive entities, would we condemn them? No, of course not. That is negative judgment, which really is just a wheel. So, Ra goes on to explain that by virtue of wisdom, in essence, they become the leader of four density negatives, which are in their lessons of love of self. This is another key point for those students of the Law of One and don't understand the negative entities being in fourth density. The density of love and understanding, well, they're loving and understanding themselves. It is called a density, or rather a path of illusion, a path of deceit, a path of deception, of lies, of falsehood, only because you are feeding an illusory self. Just like in third density, we believe we have an ego, or we are an ego, and we feed it. Thus, we create the illusion of the self, of the separate self. In the same way, fourth density and fifth density continue to feed this self, this one self that seems to appear. So it projects itself as a separate being of the universe, and it tries to maintain that identity. And so what is the positive path? Liberating yourself from any identity, whether it be here in third density, in fourth density, or in fifth density. You still have remnants of this identity. And so this is why at a certain density, the gender is no longer really a thing. In third density, it is, contrary to what a lot of people might think. Yes, we might consider ourselves to be different to what we are, and that is perfectly fine. There is actually a metaphysical reality behind this identity of how you feel. But biologically, you are that. And, this is, I think, what it should be added to what anybody is. Just accept who you are, accept what you are. You are not the shell, so you shouldn't be that protective of it, or too inclined towards one identity or the other. It doesn't matter what you are. We're 50-50. We're male, female, and I think that's the greater balance. Whatever identity we may have sexually or biologically. But anyhow, I'm going too much on the social perceptions of our life. Let's go on with this answer. And Ra says, dealing with a plane such as this third density at this harvesting, it will see the mechanism of the call more clearly and have much less distortion towards plunder or manipulation by thoughts which are given to the negatively oriented entities. Although in allowing this to occur and sending less wise entities to do this work, any successes redound to the leaders. So this is still the work of the fifth density negative entity as it works on the harvest. This process, when Ra says dealing with a plane such as this third density at this harvesting, meaning this time of the cycle which we're ending, and we're going through harvest and the graduation of four density negative entities, it is less inclined towards the plunder or manipulation by thought, which is really the work of four density. And they are more interested in the work that they can do with their highest capacity of wisdom to snuff out the light, to create the greatest darkness they can possibly create, as opposed to just the grunt work that is being given to four density negatives, which is manipulation by thought, aggrandizing of the ego, and of course the plunder, which is really to enjoy and reap the benefits of depolarizing people. Positive people, of course, which is really the biggest harvest that they are having right now on Earth. It's actually both ways, I think, from fourth and fifth density. But you can see the vast majority of people being indifferent to all of this it's really that. It's the energy. When people talk about the fourth density entities, the negative entities, feeding from this energy, meaning when in popular culture they are vampiric entities. They are feeding off your own energy. This is exactly what it is. people who are not aware of their true potential and are allowing themselves to be drained by their own fears and their own sense of guilt and shame and all of the negative anger and so on. So people who are allowing themselves to be more and more drained from their energy by these leaks that we all have, then yeah, they are greatly helping the negatives. So even in this way, and I know from a human perspective, it doesn't sound very nice to say what I'm going to say, but even from this, but you will be able to understand. Even from this work or lack of work, there is still a greater service or a service to the one creator. Because aren't the negatives the one creator as well? Of course they are. So even those who are being drained right now here are doing great service. Not to even mention the greatest service which they're doing, that they're positive beings radiating this love. You can see them everywhere. You can see confused people who are just loving beings, who are just beautiful entities. And when you pay attention, when you listen to people, you can see their plight and you can see their drama. And inside there's just this beautiful core of love and light. But they are still distracted by the illusion. However, they serve both ways. They serve passively and actively. Passively the positively, and negatively or actively the negatives, if you can understand that. So, regardless, all of this, it always helps the ones at the top, is what Ra is saying here. Everything that is being allowed and done. So, the last part of this answer is Ra saying, the fifth density sees the difficulties posed by the light, and in this way directs entities of this vibration to the seeking of targets of opportunity, such as this one. If fourth density temptations, shall we say, towards distortion of ego, etc. are not successful, the fifth density entity then thinks in terms of the removal of light. So this really solidifies my explanation of how the fifth density works, or the fifth density negative entity. Just so much to say, so many words. How the negatives in fifth density work by one, sending its lackeys, its military personnel to do the work of the ego, aggrandizing of the ego, by giving temptations of the negative and allowing people to say, I think I'm going down this path of money and wealth just for the sake of having more, and I'm going to manipulate other people. I'm going to use my passion to manipulate others or control others or have my own organization. We'll talk about this more as the video goes on, but this is what the fifth density does. And if they're not successful with their personnel to do this work, then they go on themselves to snuff out the light, or what Ra says, the removal of light. That is literally just killing the entity, as they try to do with Carla. Of course, you have to have your weaknesses for that. And this is not to create fear, because fear would actually be the weakness for this. So you see, fear, if you are still in the range of fear, which most of us have some degree of it, but some people have more than others, then that's your chink in the armor, and you should probably attend to that individually. Now, it's important to mention, because I know this will probably generate some unwarranted fear on people, is just to remind you that this specific attack that the negative entity was trying to do in Carla was, one, because she was in a very, very vulnerable state, which is the trance state, in the way she would get to allow the Ra contact. All of this was necessary for Ra to communicate. They couldn't communicate with somebody being conscious. Then there is the amount of information, the amount of light, the intensity of the light. That was the channeling of Ra. So these two things play important factors, or were important factors in creating the vulnerability for Carlo to be literally killed. So this definitely doesn't apply to us just by sleeping or being distracted with something. It is not necessary, of course, to try to channel Ra. People who are involved in channeling have some sort of vulnerability, and like Ra says in this session, and I'm getting ahead of myself, they are targeted. They're targeted with 4 density manipulation. So, in any case, this is what they do. This also sounds true with our governments, because our governments try to eliminate those who are trying to, just spread love and peace and comprehension and unity and all of that. Ask John Lennon. And there are different ways in which they do it. Of course, they don't do it as they killed Lennon in the past, or JFK for that matter. They do it they have become a little bit more wise. You can see how they have evolved, but let me not get into that, because I'll mention some of this in the rest of what I'm going to thought about here, or reflect with you. So